Things are starting to come into focus around the leagues in Europe. We know most of who is staying up and who is getting into the UEFA competitions. So, without further ado, let's dig in. Welcome back, everybody, to the No Business Soccer Podcast. I'm your host, Snooze, and we got a little bit of a fractured fam here today because I won't have my co-host, Hype Man Vic. He had some other business to do, so we congratulate him on taking care of his mama. That is always the number one priority. But we do have Brainiac J-Fam hanging out on the ones and twos, and Danny P's on the ones and twos, I guess, too, right now. We're trying to figure things out, guys, but we have a big podcast for you here today because we have news from all over the land here in Austin, Texas, as well as overseas, because it is a Monday, which means that we are doing the European reach around, or as some people call it, the European wrap up. We got stuff coming out of Serie A, Bundesliga, La Liga, and the Prem. So much to cover, and you get to hear my voice all the entire podcast. So I hope you're ready for that. I'll try to make it as sexy as I can. But before we go over to Europe, we have some breaking news here in the boots on the ground in Austin, Texas for your Austin FC Minute. So if you hadn't tuned in yet, you will know that Austin FC did lose to St. Louis FC, I believe it was, this past Saturday. It was a 2-1 loss, and actually Austin FC played a pretty good first half. It was just a meltdown in the second. But none of that really matters. It pales in comparison to the news that broke after that loss, because Austin FC has fired head coach Nico Estevez and sporting director Rodolfo Borrell, or Let Rodo Cook, as he was once known, on Monday after the team won just 3 of this season's 14 matches, which is so bad. But we have named an interim manager, which is Davy Arnaud. He was, I believe he was the interim manager whenever Wolf maybe left. I can't remember exactly, but he has been in this position before. So it's not like he's coming out and he has no experience in this. I mean, he's not been a manager, but he has done this interim role for Austin FC before. So we'll see how it turns out. And I would assume that they are doing it now before the break, so they have a lot of time to figure out who's coming in and who can go take this club forward. Because in a statement put out by, I believe this was Precourt, the owner, we are grateful to Rodo for his tireless dedication to improving the club. That was from Precourt, as he says, ultimately, we believe this decision is in the best interest of Austin FC. We know that our fans and our community deserve a winner, and our ownership group will continue to make the necessary decisions in order to deliver consistently strong results across competitions. So that is a big deal for our Austin FC. I think that we were kind of getting used to the mediocrity. Honestly, didn't see this coming. I felt like it needed to happen. I think a lot of us felt like it needed to happen. Big changes, but with the World Cup break coming up, and then also the League's Cup break, I mean, there's not a match until after this weekend. There's not a match for 2 months. And so they'll have plenty of time to figure this out, get someone in that they believe is the right guy to take us forward. Rodo he spoke a lot about there's names and coaches that you wouldn't even believe if I told you, and all the things that he was doing overseas to bring people in. And then to start this season, he's saying like, well, there's a lot of stipulations that didn't allow me to do that. But presumably he would have known about these stipulations in the MLS prior to taking the role. If he didn't, then that's a bad hire from Austin FC, which maybe they realized that it was a bad hire, and that's why he's gone now. So I don't want to make it all about Austin FC, but just know that there is a lot of ambiguity, a lot of questions to be answered for this team. We know that there will be Davy Arnaud, who's going to be the interim manager for this last game. No, that game was with St. Louis. I think it was Kansas City. That's who they lost to this past weekend. Sorry, St. Louis SC, Kansas City. Yeah, Either way, we need to see some results. And Austin FC got tired of the same one, which was losing. So there you go. That is it for your Austin FC Minute. Hope to hear better news coming soon. But we do have a lot to talk about in the standard leagues that we cover. So I think now it is time to go to Italy. It is time to go to Serie A. And now we're starting to get into the silly season. I think that's from F1, but you know how it is. Towards the end of the season, things are starting to they'd be a little silly. They're not taking it as serious in some parts, and some of the coaches are letting their hair down a little bit, so to speak. And so this is a quote coming from Antonio Conte, who, despite a dominant 3-0 away win over Pisa to safely secure Champions League for next season, because that was in question for a while, but it is no longer there. Antonio Conte dropped a post-match bombshell as he reflected on how he took a 10th place team that was depressed down and out and transformed Napoli into a powerhouse. He said, "The Napoli president has known my thoughts for months already. Regardless of what will happen next year, we might not be the strongest team, but we must become the toughest. Napoli must cause problems every year for Juve, Milan, and Inter." And he said, what he actually says is that they must cause problems for those teams every year, right? That's what he actually said. But I think what people are, at least in the press, what they're presuming he said in Conte speak, is that buy me world-class players or I'm out of here. Because he wants to do a lot of big things, but if he's not getting the backing, then I don't know if he can. Although it's weird that he says that, because coming into the season, KDB, Kevin De Bruyne, coming in whenever he just had McTominay, who lit the league on fire, Højlund coming in. I mean, it felt like it was going to be a big deal. Maybe there's just some pieces that were missing outside of the attacking front. Not sure. But either way, he's making a pretty big statement. And honestly, I could just see De Laurentiis, who's the president of Napoli, sitting in his executive suite, losing his mind, trying to figure out how he's going to handle this, because if you don't really know much about Napoli's past, De Laurentiis he has a huge ego, as most of these players, coaches, owners, executives do. But specifically, this guy, he runs people out of town all the time because he has his way of doing things. And he's sitting up there listening to Conte basically tell everyone that if you don't submit, or if you don't put your money where your mouth is, I'm out of here. And we saw what happened before he got there. I'm sure they don't want that to happen again, because if he doesn't break the bank this summer, it could be a messy divorce. The marriage could be coming to an end, as Conte alluded to, that he could be out if things don't turn his way this summer. So that is the big bombshell from this weekend in Serie A, the news and notes. We will now jump in to our top matches from Serie A, match day 37. And our first match, the main one that we had highlighted, was the Derby della Capitale, the Roma versus Lazio. And Rome is red, or burgundy, or whatever color they want to call it, after a pretty easy win for Roma in the battle for Rome. Rome had more to play for coming into this game. It just felt like it wasn't going to be a normal derby for them, because the emotions and the match, they always play out crazy. You never know how it's going to happen. But they had so much riding on it getting into that Champions League spot with the win. Not confirming it, but just about. And in this game, Malen and Dybala were linking up so well. It looked like they were going to run away with it at one point, but instead they opted for a nice, comfortable 2-0 win. But of course, because it's a Derby de la Capitale, as you must say, 2 players were sent off for an incident and left both teams down to 10 men to finish the game. The result leaves Roma in the driver's seat for the Champions League next season, but they still have to beat out Como and Juve next week to ensure that they're in there. But it is looking ever more increasingly likely that they get in, which would be pretty cool. I think Roma deserve it. They have been one of the better, more consistent teams all season. They've been up and around that area. Obviously, Inter and Napoli would be ahead of them. But Milan, man, we'll talk about it in a second. Just know that Roma are well on their way. Okay. And all the games were played at the same time on Sunday, so no breakup in schedule, no Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, just straight up a Sunday clash. Sorry. Get my thoughts together here. Okay. We started off with Pisa 0, Napoli 3. We figured this would happen and Napoli would make it a routine win where they confirm their Champions League place next season. Goals from Højlund and McTominay. It doesn't get much better for a Napoli side who did confirm Champions League, except after the game we talked about what Conte said, and maybe it didn't get as happy as we thought, because a 3-0 win, I mean, it's a good win to come from Napoli. They usually don't win or blow out teams like that too often. The next match, Como 1, Parma 0. It wasn't the cleanest of wins for Como, as they had plenty of chances come back off the bar, and a particular one-on-one with the keeper for Asan Diao that couldn't convert. But in the end, they get a 1-0 win and take the Champions League fight to the last day of the season. And they are not letting those teams above them down. They're not letting them slip up because they are right on their heels. Como looking very, very impressive to end the season. They looked impressive all season, but particularly now they're putting the feet to the fire of the teams above them. Genoa 1, Milan 2. How bad did Milan need that win? Not only does it get them out of the funk they were in, but it should restore the vibes, the good vibes as well, as they keep them in the driver's seat to get back in the Champions League. It looks like they're probably going to do it. I believe they're tied on points with Roma, but we'll find out when we look at the table here in just a moment. And then we had Roma versus Lazio. So we move on to Juve and Fiorentina. And one of the teams I had penciled in for the top four was definitely Juve, the way that they had carried themselves up to this point. They hadn't lost in a while, and they were kind of just cruising towards that top four finish. I had zero expectations, that this was going to be the game that our Fiorentina would go to Turin and get all 3 points in. But they really did a good job here. They get that done. And if you hadn't seen it, check out Mandragora. It's like a Game of Thrones name. But anyway, check out Mandragora's goal. It was perfect, absolutely perfect goal. It was a shocking result. It was the shocking result of the weekend in Serie A, and it leaves Juve on the outside looking in for a top four finish. And their fans, I believe this is the last home game, if I'm not mistaken, and they were obviously going to clap the fans, and the fans were not having it. They were telling them to get out of here. You aren't playing with any heart, nothing at all. They didn't care about this team at all. And it might turn out that way, even though they'll still get in Europe, maybe not in the Champions League, but we'll see. They still have it all to play for next week. All right, moving on to Inter 1, Verona 1. And we have, we'll give Inter a pass for this one. They had shots being blocked by Verona bodies all day long. And when I say bodies, just look at it. It's like time after time, shots are just bouncing off of dudes' backs, legs, head, whatever. They would not allow them to get this win, which is pretty cool for a Verona side that have nothing to play for. But of course, like it always happens, if a team is sitting there shooting over and over and over and is not converting, you know that the other team is going to make them pay. And that's what happened. And this is Inter versus Verona. Like, it shouldn't happen that way, but it did. The Verona goal was taken by Kieran Bowie. And honestly, if you watch the goal from him, it was like he's a psychopath. He's a stone cold killer. The dude gets a long ball, just shot up to the moon. It bounces down. He bullies the defender, and then he just kind of takes a quick shot, catches the keeper off guard. It barely even looks at the goal, and it just rolls right in. And honestly, he doesn't even really celebrate. And you're talking about a guy who's on a team who's already been relegated, who's playing the team that won the Scudetto. And, I mean, he just goes around, and he's just like, people are coming up to him, and he's like, whatever, high-fiving. I mean, what a sick goal against the champs, and he did not give a crap. That's a psychopath right there. Atalanta 0, Bologna 1. Okay, well, I said that it would be a long shot for Bologna to get into the Champions or to the Conference League because the direct opposition was Atalanta, and they were 6 points ahead of them. But they did step one, which we talked about, which was beat Atalanta on the road in Bergamo to take the fight into the next week. And now they just have to win again and hope that Atalanta lose. And because it's a head-to-head before goal differential in Serie A, the 12 goal difference between Atalanta and Bologna doesn't mean anything. It would mean everything in other leagues, but that doesn't exist. It's head-to-head, and I believe that Bologna's win is enough to see them overtake Atalanta if they were on the same amount of points going into or after the final day. Moving on, we have Udinese taking on Cremonese. The Azis going at it. Cremonese got to be thinking that it's absolute bullshit after this match, after going on the road to Udinese, who have been very good recently, and get this 1-0 win, only to see that they still didn't get out of the bottom three because of other results elsewhere. But the win and Vardy's goal will give them confidence that they can get it over the line on the final day, which will be very, very interesting between them and the Milkmen. And speaking of, Sassuolo 2, Lecce 3. This was probably the game of the weekend that saw the Milkmen get a stoppage time winner to keep them in pole position to stay up next season. It was a great back and forth between these two teams, but ultimately Lecce had more to play for. They had more desire, more heart, and they were on full display at the final whistle as they get that valuable 3 points. Final game, Cagliari 2, Torino 1. Cagliari did what they needed to and got a result against a tough Torino side, and that was all they needed to confirm that they will be staying up. They don't have to stress about it going into the last week. Job well done. It's only the last two teams, the final two teams, Cremonese and Lecce, as we'll see in the table in just a moment. Boom! Look at that. And actually, it's way too small for me to see. So I'm going to pull it up over my own, but you didn't need to know that. Oh, here we go. Yeah, so obviously we knew that Inter was going to win this league. They won it a couple weeks back. Then we have Napoli, who also confirmed that they will be at least in the Champions League, probably finish at 2. Milan and Roma, as you look at the table, 70 points, and then Como and Juve on 68 points, which means that going into the last fixture of the season, match day 38, Milan, Roma, Como, and Juve. That's 3 through 6. All of them could be jumbled by the time we see the final table. It'll be very interesting, very fun to watch. We'll break it down here on Thursday. Just check it out. The look ahead, the weekend look ahead. It'll come out Friday, actually. Sorry. Going down to the bottom of the table. And if you want to see the rest of the fight there, you see that Juve, Como, I talked about those already, but that's the final battle is Bologna taking on Atalanta for that final Conference League spot. It's a 3-point difference. Like we mentioned, they caught up the 3 points because they beat them directly. So it's not out of the question that Bologna can get into the Conference League at the expense of Atalanta. Okay, moving on. We have Cremonese towards the bottom of the table. They're currently occupying that 18th spot, but that means that they're on 34 points. Verona and Pisa, they've been gone. They were the worst teams in Serie A. Sayonara to you. But we do have a hell of a fight in this final match day that sees the Milkmen on 35 points and Cremonese on 34 points, both coming in with wins. Cremonese back-to-back wins. Milkmen have won 2 of their last 3. Yeah, I mean, Lecce's doing the damn thing. Can they stay up, though, will be the question. It will be interesting, too, because we had Verona, that obviously is a team that's going down. That was in the Serie A last season, but Pisa were newly promoted and now they're newly relegated. If Cremonese stayed up, that would only be one of the promoted teams going down in Serie A, which that's pretty cool. You see that Sassuolo is nowhere near getting relegated as they're sitting closer to mid-table. And we'll see how they do going into next season. I did see the gondolas were flowing in Venice, which means that the parade for their eventual rival in Serie A will be coming this summer. It's really cool stuff to see. I mean, I know we just saw them last year, but hey, Venezia is back. And I think Gianluca Buzio, the American who used to play for Kansas City, he's still with Venezia. He got promoted again. So we get to see him again in the limelight. Okay, that is it for your Serie A breakdown for match day 37. Only one more to go. It's going to be very, very interesting to see how it all ties together after such a long season. But for now, we're going to a league that did end this past weekend, and that's going to take us to Germany. That's going to take us to the Bundesliga. And news and notes from the Bundesliga. Immediately following the season finale, Eintracht Frankfurt sporting director Markus Krösche took to a microphone to announce they had mutually terminated the contract of head coach Albert Riera after finishing 8th. Krösche, I'm pretty sure that's how you pronounce that, Krösche, noted that after intensive discussions, we've jointly decided to end our collaboration with immediate effect. I don't know executive speak how that works for this guy. I don't know much about him, but I will say what that sounds like is after a lot of yelling and screaming, we decided that, this isn't going to work anymore. Dude, you got to go. And we talked about how Riera was kind of losing his shit recently in press conferences, saying, like, do you really think that I don't have a hold on my locker room? And that, remember, he called Johnny Burkhardt fat, apparently. So, I mean, crazy stuff going on in Frankfurt, but they are splitting with him, which we expected. And so we'll see how things turn out this summer and who they get to come in and take over the reins for Albert Riera. Okay, that is it for your news and notes. Now let's jump in to the match day, and that is the final match day, 34 of the Bundesliga. And the top match from the Bundesliga was really all about the battle to stay up. And we were set up for some great, great last day drama. But in the end, Double H, which is Heidenheim, and St. Pauli never showed up to their match. And it seemed fitting, not they weren't playing each other, but just their matches in general. But either way, it was fitting that they were the two to go down. Specifically, St. Pauli, we'll break that down for a second because they've been absolutely terrible to finish the year with 4 straight losses, now relegated. And Double H, on the other hand, had it perfect with a home match set up against a team that had nothing to play for in Mainz, but they were down 2-0 by halftime. And they never really looked like they were going to get themselves back into this game. And that's just, I mean, I don't know if you staying in the Bundesliga isn't enough to get your team going. I don't know what is. It just felt like they were a broken team by this point, which, they had a chance to stay up. Long shot. I mean, not even. You just had to win and hope that the other teams didn't. And they didn't get it. They didn't get it done. And now, really, what ultimately everything sets up is a showdown between Wolfsburg and Paderborn, who they have a massive chance to stay up in the Bundesliga. I should have looked it up before the podcast, but the last three, I believe, that I can remember at least, have the relegation playoff has gone to the team that's in the Bundesliga, presumably because they have the Bundesliga experience. They've played some of the better teams in Germany week after week, all season. And so it's just a little bit more battle tested. But Paderborn, not too long ago, were in the Bundesliga themselves. So they get themselves into that third spot. They get themselves into the relegation promotion playoff. And I believe that the dates for that is the 21st. Let me just verify real quick. 21st and 28th, I believe. Yeah, look at that. No, 21st is the first leg, and the 25th is the second leg. So what does that mean? By next Thursday, well, next Monday for sure, we'll know who is staying up if Wolfsburg get it done. So let's find out. Okay, moving on to the rest of the match day, and similar to most of the leagues around Europe, there was a Saturday slate of games for the final match day in the Bundesliga. We talked about the two games that pitted St. Pauli and Wolfsburg together, Heidenheim versus Mainz together. Now we'll move on to the game that got Albert Riera sacked. Eintracht Frankfurt 2, Stuttgart 2. Stuttgart weren't able to hold up their end of the bargain as they needed to win at Frankfurt to guarantee Champions League, but the Hoff slipping up, that's Hoffenheim, slipping up meant it didn't matter, and the point was more than enough to get them across the line. We know that Eintracht Frankfurt have a lot to do this summer, but seeing Johnny Burkhardt score a brace to end the season, it leaves a good taste in their mouths. It leaves the good feelings in the stadium. So we'll see how things turn out for them going into next year. Next game, Werder Bremen 0, Dortmund 2. Dortmund in the season on a high, winning 3 of 4, and really this one, talk about leaving a good taste in your mouth. This one leaves a good taste in your mouth because after the up and down season that they had, I don't even know if it's actually up and down. It's just a historic season from Bayern that leaves it looking a little stale for Dortmund. But either way, they go through. They win 3 of 4 going into the offseason. I don't know if it means much for the team, but Niko Kovac has his side playing well to end the season. He had him playing well in the summer, and so it just kind of carried over. But where is this team ultimately going to go, I think, is the real question. Are they going to really put in an effort to challenge Bayern, or they're just cool with being the best of the rest, as Heidman Vic likes to say? We'll find out. Leverkusen 1, Hamburg 1. It was a long shot for Leverkusen to get into the top 4, but with a draw, they did confirm that they will be in the Europa League next season, which is probably better in a competitively speaking, I guess I could say, at this time for this team. Hamburg did have a great send-off for Luka Vuskovic, though, who was their best player by far this season, and he looks like he's set to be a top center back for years to come at his home club of Tottenham Hotspur. Gladbach 0, Hoffenheim 4. I don't think anyone told the Hoff that they had something to play for still, because they were terrible in this game. Defensive mistakes, stupid decisions, and it adds up to an ass whooping. Nothing sums up the game better than Hoffenheim. Oh, move my nose. Hoffenheim right out of the break, like literally after halftime. They were down 2-0, knowing that they need to win to get into the Champions League and keep their top 4 dreams alive. But as soon as the ball's kicked, and I mean as soon as the ball's kicked, Tim Lemperle, he just sprints from the Gladbach half directly to where the ball goes, and he just trucks through a center back. I mean, throws his shoulder into him, and just for what reason? There's no reason. The ball's rolling towards him, yeah, but it's not like he's going to get past him. He didn't even try. He just runs directly into him. Obviously, Lemperle gets a yellow card for that, but the issue with that is that he was already on a yellow card, so he gets a second, and he gets red carded, and then within the first 12 seconds of the second half starting, Hoffenheim were down a man and down 2 goals. Didn't get better for them, and what can we say? And it was good on Gladbach. If I didn't even say who won that game, Gladbach. Okay, moving on. We have Bayern Munich versus Cologne. And we jokingly said that Bayern had nothing to play for, so they probably would win this one 5-0. Well, we were wrong because Cologne did score a goal. But other than that, it was still Bayern all day because Kane ends up getting a hat trick, and he gets, the goal differential doesn't add up to more than the points that they had, but a 5-1 win to end the season. They did all they could to get there. We'll see on the table what their goal differential is, but I think it was like 80. They ended up with 88 points and 85 goal differential, something like that. Ridiculous stuff. But yeah, man, 5-1 for Bayern with nothing to play for. I said it might happen. I thought it'd be 5-0 though. Moving on, we did have a very feel-good story to end the season, and that was Union Berlin 4, Augsburg 0. It was the result that we were absolutely all rooting for. No offense to Augsburg. No, nothing against the tricky trees there, but we just needed to see Marie-Louise Etta go out with a bang, and that's exactly what we got. A couple of the goals in this 4-0 win were bangers as well. They had the house rocking. It looked like an awesome place to be. One of those times it gives you FOMO to not be in the stands. What a cool way to end the season for Union Berlin. Congrats. That's a soft clap for them. And then the final game that we covered, Freiburg, that we got in this slate was Freiburg 4, Leipzig 1. A lot of teams scoring a lot of goals. Crazy stuff. I guess it's not too crazy for the Bundesliga. But either way, Freiburg 4, Leipzig 1, did not expect this. Blowing out a top 3 team in the league heading into the Europa League final sounds pretty nice if you're the Black Forest boys. The result didn't mean too much for either side, but with the win, Freiburg know for sure that they will be in a European competition next season. They just don't know if it's going to be the Conference League, which they got into by virtue of the table, or the Champions League if they end up beating Aston Villa in the Europa League final. I believe that's coming up in a couple days. So we'll find out how they do. But for now, just know that Freiburg are battle-tested and ready to go. And with that said, let's take a look at the table and see where we are in the Bundesliga. Because, again, final match day. It is done. What we're looking at here is the final standings, and everyone will be knows exactly where they're going to be next season. So the Bundesliga ends with your obvious number one choice, Bayern Munich, Dortmund followed by Leipzig and Stuttgart. That is your top 4 that's going into the Champions League. We'll be representing the Bundesliga in that competition next season. We also get Hoffenheim and Leverkusen in the Europa League, which, if you ask me, looking at the Bundesliga teams, that's pretty cool to have those 2 teams in there, Hoffenheim and Leverkusen. It seems like they're probably better suited at this point for the Europa League, so they can go a little bit further. And I know that the conversation is about the money and what you don't get if you don't get into the Champions League. But I'm all for watching actual competitive games. We don't need Hoffenheim getting blown out 7-0 by Barcelona or Real Madrid next season. Like, we just don't need that. We'll see them in the Europa League actually playing teams that they're competitive against, and it'll be a lot of fun. And so will Leverkusen. And then Freiburg, of course, we talked about it. They're in the Conference League, and they have a chance to be in the Champions League. And I believe if they end up getting in the Champions League by virtue of beating Aston Villa in the Europa League final, then it would go to the Conference League spot, would go to the next team down, which means that Eintracht Frankfurt could back themselves in to a European spot. It would be pretty cool. Although they were followed by a point. They were only a point away, Augsburg, from getting that spot, and I feel like they probably deserved a little bit more. Anyway. Okay. That is it in the Bundesliga. What a season we had. I felt like we knew who was going to win that thing within the first couple match days. Bayern were just tearing through teams. Still hard to believe that they're not going to be in the Champions League final, but we'll have to watch Arsenal either win or not win that trophy, which is really cool stuff if you're an Arsenal fan, I guess. But it's been a fun season. I think overall, I called that Freiburg and Mainz would make a step coming into this season just because I felt like the way they ended, that they had a lot of momentum and they'd be able to get it done. But ultimately, Mainz, they were pretty much in the relegation spot for over half of the season, it felt like. And they ended up getting up to mid-table, which is fine, which is awesome. But to see Freiburg, they were also around the bottom of the table at, I would say, at the halfway mark. They ended up getting hot, finding themselves deep into the Europa League, now in the final, finding themselves in the top 7 and getting into Europe, even if they don't win the Europa League, which is very, very cool stuff. I don't want to say that I was right about either of those because I feel like they were going to be a little bit better, but those are the teams that coming into the season, I was very high on, and we'll see how it ends up turning out for them. Cool also to see that the teams that were promoted are doing pretty well. Cologne and Hamburg going to be there next season for sure, which we're also getting Schalke up here. That is going to be really cool to see Schalke in the Bundesliga once more. I can talk about that all day, but we have plenty of time to talk about that in the off season, which begins now for the Bundesliga. So we move on to other leagues and other matters to discuss. And that takes our train over to Spain and over to La Liga. And man, these news and notes are coming crazy fast out of Spain and specifically out of Madrid, the white side, Los Blancos. Because instead of the focus being on Real Madrid's 2-1 victory over Sevilla, the entire country is talking about a bizarre, explosive emergency press conference / rant held by Madrid president Florentino Perez, frustrated by losing the title to Barca and internal club leaks around the fights and things have been happening. Perez went completely rogue on the microphone, saying things like, "I've won 7 La Liga titles. I should have won 14, but they stole 7 from me. This season, refereeing stole 18 points from us." Trying to mention that he should have won the league again with Real Madrid. They say, this is continuing quotes from Florentino Perez. They say Real Madrid is in chaos. We have found the person who leaked the information about Valverde and Tchouaméni fight. That person is angry because he is leaving the club. And he goes on to say, people say I have cancer, that I want to leave. Perfect. I'll call elections and we'll see who can beat me. I'm the best president in the world. Also threw in the cancer part. Don't know. No one prompted that. He just decided to throw that in there. And then to read this or to hear this and see this, and he still made things worse because, believe it or not, he's referring to 2 recent articles published about the club. And Perez says one of them was written by a woman. I don't even know if she knows anything about football. Bro, come on. He later added, pointing to another journalist, female journalist, "That girl there, ask your question. The rest of you are ugly." Why? Was he drunk? What was he high? I don't know what was going on. But it's just such a crazy contrast because meanwhile, Hansi Flick is over at Barcelona getting thrown into the air by his players after winning the title and giving Lewandowski a hero's legendary send-off. And I mean, you just look at what's happening on the other side of Spain, and it's truly wild, the contrast between Spain's elite at this moment. Now, I don't even know where it goes from here, but one thing is for sure, the other part of this breaking news is that, well, I haven't even seen it actually come out. It is just heavily, heavily rumored that Jose Mourinho has signed. He is going to be the coach for Real Madrid. And if it is official by now, by the time you hear this, it might be very crazy stuff, though. And it just seems like he's not the type of coach you want or the type of manager you want in this situation. Maybe he is because he's the biggest ego out of all of them. We'll see how this works out. But crazy, crazy stuff coming out of the white side of Madrid. Okay, now let's jump into the match day. And we had a lot of bangers in this match day 37 for La Liga. We start with our top matches. That's Osasuna 1, Espanyol 2. Espanyol hadn't won a game all 2026 and were on the brink of relegation. Then they decided to turn it back on and win 2 straight and shoot them all the way up to 11th in the table. And now going into the final match day, they are 5 points clear and safe. Nothing to worry about. They definitely did it the hard way, and they will have to regroup this summer. But the good news is that they know they'll still be in the top flight come August. And even a draw would have been a good result for Osasuna. This is switching to the other side now. But they lost again, which makes it 4 losses in a row to close out the season for Osasuna. Well, not closing out the season, because if they close out the season with 5 in a row in their last game next season, they will be relegated. well, they could be relegated. There's a lot of teams down there. Levante 2, Mallorca 0. This had all the greatness that you get from a relegation battle. We had the home side Levante go up a goal in the first half because of a stupid mistake by the Mallorca defender. And that was the only excitement we had until there was an incident in the 80th minute where a Levante, just stay with me here. There's a Levante defender who goes down in the box. He's rolling around, dying, obviously dying. A Mallorca player walks up to him, bends down and tells him to get up. And when he does, he gives him a little tug on the back of his hair, like, the hair. And that shit hurts. That's not fun. But he does that to him. And of course, the man that's rolling around dying, he has to stop dying for a second. He just like slaps the guy in the face who pulled his hair. And the guy that gets slapped in the face goes down, and now they're both dying. They're rolling around on the floor, and it gets reviewed by VAR. Both guys get sent off. And for the last 10 minutes plus, they had to play 10v10 after this bizarre situation at the bottom of the table. Levante end up scoring again from a corner, and they also miss a penalty in stoppage time. But either way, it ends up 2-0 to Levante and puts them in the driver's seat to stay up, while Mallorca will need to win next week and hope that some results go their way or they're going down. Crazy, crazy stuff. Exactly what you want to see in a 6-pointer relegation battle, though. It's the drama. It's the juicy stuff. Okay. Let's move on, because we also had a slate of all Sunday games. And we had Rayo 2, Villarreal 0. The mighty Rayo Vallecano are safe. And it wasn't like they were particularly worried, but it wasn't set in stone yet. And we had to figure it out. Villarreal did all their work already, so losing 2 in a row, it's not a big deal for them right now. Doesn't look good, but they're in the top 4. They're done. Job's done. But Rayo safely there, and they're still in a Conference League final. So, all around, just a great, great season for Rayo Vallecano, despite what happens in the next couple of weeks. Moving on, we had Athletic Club 1, Celta 1. It's a fair result for both sides, as Athletic Club were 5 points clear and safe from the drop in 12th. And Celta's point sends them 4 points clear, that is, of Rayo. So they're for sure getting back into Europe next season. Now it's up to them to make sure it's either Europa League or the Conference League. I'm sure they preferred the Europa League again, see how far they can go once more. Levante, Mallorca, we already talked about, so we move on to Sevilla 0, Real Madrid 1. As we mentioned in the preview of this match, though, this was always going to be a loss for Sevilla. Real Madrid, they're just too strong of a team right now. And other games, the other games were the ones that were going to define how Sevilla's season went. They're still 3 points clear with a +3 goal differential, which means that we'll get in the weeds on Thursday how it all work out. But either way, they should be fine. It should be more than enough to get them through with the 3 games that they won prior to this one. Real Sociedad 3, Valencia 4. This game was peak end of season with nothing riding on it type of game. Both teams just went at it, and it was absolutely fun. Both teams scored within the first 7 minutes of the game, and they traded goals only for La Real to go up 3-2 with Valencia down a man in the 70th minute. And they just kept going at it. There was no defense at all, and Valencia ends up completing the comeback with 10 men. Good stuff. And I could make a statement about how La Real have really fallen off the past month or so. They haven't won too many games since their triumph in the Copa del Rey, but ultimately the triumph in the Copa del Rey gets them a trophy and European football next season. So, they weren't getting into the top 5 to get into the Champions League. It's all good. What else can we say? They just want to get on the beach already. Elche 1, Getafe 0. It's a massive, massive win for Elche as they give themselves a big chance to stay up with this win. They now just need to better the result of Girona next weekend, and they are safe to be in the league next season. Getafe losing wasn't a big deal, but because of the Rayo win elsewhere, they do have to match their result, them being Rayo, or they could lose out on their Conference League spot for next season. Although Rayo, they might not need to do that at all, because they might win the damn Conference League this season and be in the Europa League next season. So who knows what's going to happen? But either way, I feel like Getafe will probably want to make sure that they're there in the table come the end of the season. Osasuna Espanyol, we talked about that. So Atletico Madrid, they beat Girona 1-0. It was Antoine Griezmann's swan song for Atleti in front of their home crowd, and he sets up Ademola Lookman with a game-winning goal and sends Girona to the bottom 3. It was a beautiful send-off for the Frenchman, but Girona are seriously staring down the barrel of relegation heading in to the last match day. And I will not be happy of being right whenever I said they were going to go down after only 3 match days into the season, because they were really horrible those match days. I've said it multiple times. they've turned things around, and it's kind of been roller coaster, man. They were really bad, then they were really good. They were really bad, they're really good. I don't know how it's going to end, but it's not looking good for Girona. Real Oviedo 0, Alaves 1. Oviedo already knew they were down, but could have been a party pooper. Is that a word that they use in Europe? Probably not. But anyway, they could have been party poopers for Alaves, but Alaves said, hell no, they weren't going to let that happen. They get much needed 3 points and sees them sit 3 points clear of the drop with one more match day to go. Cool stuff from Alaves, and they are almost there. The final match of this match day was Barcelona 3, Real Betis 1. We got goals from Rafinha. We got goals from Isco. Everything we want to see in this match from a mutual, as it ends with no big injuries before the World Cup. We got one more match day to go, but man, it's just great stuff to see Barcelona and all these teams getting healthy towards the end of the season, especially seeing Isco and seeing Anthony and seeing all the players out there for Betis as well, because they are in the Champions League. And man, I might post a few on our socials, but the social team for Betis is having a blast right now because they're in the Champions League. Just all these different memes that they're doing. It's hilarious stuff. It's really cool to see. And you can tell they're pretty excited to be back in the Champions League. And we'll see how they do come next season. Okay. With that, let's take a look at the table, because we have some juicy stuff coming up, man. One more match day to go. And we already know who won the league. That's Barcelona. Real Madrid already second, kind of locked it up like Napoli in Serie A. They're good to go. Atletico Madrid with 69 points. Actually, Villarreal in third with 69 points, and so is Atletico Madrid, which means that the top four absolutely locked down. Villarreal, Atletico Madrid, maybe they swap spots, but who really cares? It doesn't matter. The difference is Real Betis. Look at that. They locked up that top five, which means they're in the Champions League, as we just talked about. And the fight will really come down to Getafe and Celta. Who's going to be the team that's in the Europa League and who's going to be the team in the Conference League. But, of course, Rayo Vallecano are only a point away from Getafe. They can't catch Celta, but they can catch Getafe. So we'll have to see how that ends at the end of match day 38. But, man, interesting stuff at the top of the table. I think we could have all probably called out the top five, right? Barcelona, Real Madrid, Villarreal, Atletico. Maybe Real Betis is a stretch, but they're definitely probably the fifth best team. If not, maybe you would have said Real Sociedad or Athletic Club, the teams from the Basque side of things. They just didn't have the best seasons this year as far as the table is concerned. I think that La Real would say that they had a very good season overall. Okay, let's go to the bottom of the table, though, because that's where the real juicy stuff is. So now, if you look at, who is it? Mallorca with 39 points. So what is that? 39, 40, 41, 42. So they can only get up to 42 points, which means that from 19th up to 15th in Levante. So that's Levante, Osasuna, Elche. They could all go down if Mallorca were to win and they were to lose. But, well, obviously there's a goal differential and stuff like that. We'll get into it on Thursday. But you look at Girona on 40 points, which means that they could catch all the way up to 13th, which means that Athletic Club in 12th are the last safe team. So, I mean, Sevilla all the way down to Mallorca could switch so much with only one game left to play. Now, this league does do it by goal differential, so there's going to be some massive there has to be massive goal swings for this, for some of the clubs to go down, but mathematically not impossible. Again, a lot to break down, and we'll try to break it all down this coming Thursday on the weekend look ahead. So come check us out. No Business Soccer Podcast. Okay, that is it for this league. A lot of talking. We only have one more. So let's power through it, and let's get to the juicy stuff. And we're going over to England, which means we're going to the Prem. And we start with the news and notes from around the Prem, around England, to be fair. Manchester City, they won the FA Cup, beating Chelsea this Saturday. And that's not even the biggest piece of news coming out from those teams and those clubs this weekend, which is crazy. Because Sunday after the loss, Chelsea announced that Xabi Alonso would be taking over the Chelsea job this summer, which leaves us with a ton of questions. A lot I wanted to ask Vic, but he's not here, so it's going to be harder to ask him. But the first one that comes to mind is Xabi comes in having his own style of play, his own persona, his own philosophy in the game of football. And it's going to be probably different than the way that Bluco has hired or how has tended to hire the past couple of managers. And how does it all work out? Because they've butted heads with Enzo Maresca. They've butted heads with, I'm blanking on the names before him. But, I mean, there's just not a lot there that tells us that he's going to be the person that's going to make this work, or if it's even going to work at all. But one thing to note is that he, unlike Liam Rossigna, he was not labeled as a head coach. He was labeled as the manager of this team, which is big because a manager will manage the players. They'll manage the way the team plays. A coach will just kind of like, put the pawns where they need to be, and the higher-ups will tell you what to do. In theory. Maybe it's just semantics, but the press is making a big deal out of it. And the second part of this hire makes you really think about what's going on with Liverpool, because we'll talk about the game here in just a couple minutes. But Liverpool are not in a good spot right now. Slot has been under fire for a bit. I think the fans have finally turned on him, most of them, which it's a whole story in itself. I mean, how do you turn so fast on a guy that comes in his first season and wins the league and gets you to the semifinal of the Champions League? Comes in this season, he doesn't win the league, but to get back into the Champions League in the top five. But then, it's not secure yet. But either way, at this moment, he's in the top five getting into the Champions League. And he placed, I think he got to the quarterfinals of the Champions League. It's just crazy stuff. This is an obvious quality coach, quality manager, but it feels like he's lost he's lost the fans. And more importantly, it's starting to look like he's lost the locker room, which brings the question, why are you talking about this guy? Because Xabi Alonso, Liverpool legend, probably one of the best players, top 10 for sure in their history. And he's available to be the manager, the head coach, whatever you want to call him. And they didn't hire him. And not only did they not hire him, they're saying they didn't even consider him, which is kind of a low blow. But also, the new owners, they don't think anything's wrong with Slot. So if they don't think that, why would you? It's a lot of questions to be asked for this. We'll talk about it more whenever Vic's back in the saddle, which I don't know when it's going to be. Boy going to Mexico soon. He's going to be sipping margaritas on the beach again. I'm just here changing diapers. But the other piece of news coming out of this game from these teams is that City announced today on Monday that Pep Guardiola is stepping down as the City boss after all of these years that he's been there at the end of this season, regardless of what happens. And apparently, not only is he stepping down, everybody's known about it in City for months and months, and it never leaked out. And they've already brought in Enzo Maresca. He's already lined up as his replacement. They laid it out perfectly. You see how that works out? Other clubs don't do that. City, it was under wraps, and they knew what was going to happen, and it just breaks. And it didn't even break. If Pep Guardiola says it, it's not like it's breaking news, but it's not like someone is leaking it. He's telling us, and that's how we're finding out. It's just crazy. Going to be a new look to the season, a new look to the Premier League season in the summer. And a lot of questions to be asked about how these two teams are going to be playing, but certainly going to be interesting with Enzo Maresca taking over City and Xabi Alonso taking on Chelsea. Let's move into the match days now, shall we? We had the top match for match day 37 that we lined up was Aston Villa taking on Liverpool. Neither team won in their previous 3 Premier League matches prior to this game, but that didn't stop Villa from looking incredible and scoring some absolute bangers and really dominating Liverpool for large stretches of this game. Now, to be fair to Szoboszlai, the Szoboszlai slip really came at an inopportune time as Liverpool had just leveled it and were looking to build off of VVD's goal. And once that happened, once he slipped and that goal went in, you just saw the energy get zapped right out of them. And they let in 2 more goals to go down 4-1 before Virgil van Dijk gets a brace in stoppage time. It's really poor from Liverpool, and it has been poor for some time. We've already said it they've already said that Slot's the man for next season. We just talked about it. And now that, Xabi Alonso, it just makes things so much worse. Is this the right thing to do is the real question. Okay, let's move on. That game was on Friday. We had matches on Sunday, which saw Manchester United 3, Forest 2. Bruno Fernandes ties the assist record, and United confirm third place. Not too many better ways to end a season than that. Sorry, I had to wet my whistle. MGW, Morgan Gibbs White. He gets another goal, and he still might not be on the England squad. But the story of the game is how Mbeumo's assist how was it allowed to stand after a pretty blatant handball? If you saw the build up to the goal, I think it was Matias Cunha's goal. He has a ball that hits his hip, and his arm is basically at his side, so it gets pinned between his hip and his arm. It doesn't necessarily hit his arm, but it definitely stops the ball from going past him. And they apparently it didn't get called as a handball because the rule says that the handball can't. The handballs that are reviewed are from the goal scorer, not the goal provider. So it's not something that can be reviewed, is the way I understood it. But there's no way that can be like. There's no way that's the reason, because you can see it. And if you messed up and you're looking at VAR, you're telling me, oh, because it wasn't the guy who scored, we have to ignore that. That's so dumb. I don't know if that's the way. Let me know in the comments if that's correct. That's the way that I understood it. But either way, blatant handball. The game ultimately doesn't mean anything. It just highlights how stupid VAR has been for large stretches of its entire history, but also this season specifically in the Prem. Okay, moving on. Brentford 2, Palace 2. Brentford will be annoyed that Palace tried this hard with nothing to play for, because the draw sees them only a point above Sunderland for the Conference League spot. But Palace were by far the better team in this game, and they should have won. Brentford have been drawing a lot. They've been slumping a whole lot outside of that 3-0 win over West Ham. But, I mean, we expected a lot less from them, so look at them getting it done. Okay, moving on. Leeds 1, Brighton 0. It's a stoppage time winner for DCL as Leeds take all 3 points from Brighton in a game where Brighton were by far the better team, but were not clinical at all in the box. Hersler's men were doing the best they could, but they could not finish. Not sure it means anything for Leeds, but the loss makes it very important for the final day for Brighton as they try to confirm European football for next season. Wolves 1, Fulham 1. This was a nothing burger game that ended in a draw. Wolves' goal was really good, though, if you watch it. Mateus Mane, who gets a long-range one from outside the box. And this is crazy stuff, but I heard a stat that even before next week's game, regardless of the result, they could win it, they could lose, whatever. It's Wolves' worst points total ever in the Premier League season. Yikes, not good. Everton 1, Sunderland 3. It felt like Everton thought that one goal would be enough, because after that, they shut down in the second half, and Sunderland walked all over them at the Hill Dickinson as well. And with that result, it makes Sunderland within a point and a result next week of possibly getting into Europe, and basically eliminates Everton from Europe altogether next season, which is just perfectly fine if you're a Spurs fan. No one? Newcastle 3, West Ham 1. Now, before I get into how terrible West Ham were in this game, we have to say what an absolute golazo, banger from Tati Castellanos. I mean, it might be the goal of the season with a first touch volley from outside the box. It was so beautiful. Go check it out. But other than that, West Ham looked like a team that were absolutely about to be heading down, because they were down 3-0 before that goal and looked lost in the first half. They got outrun, outgunned, out everything by Newcastle, and they need to hope that Spurs lose and they to even have a chance of staying up, because if Spurs get even a point, if they draw at Chelsea, which we'll talk about in a second, West Ham are down before they even kick a ball in the final match day. And we also had a game today, which was Arsenal beating Burnley. Guess what? 1-0, which is their standard score against teams in the Prem this season, because they've been terrible to watch. But who cares if they win the league, which they very well might at this point, because now City on Tuesday, well, if you're watching this today, City take on Bournemouth, which Bournemouth, they're fighting for so much, man. They're trying to get into Europe, into possibly the Champions League, and they have to do it by making sure that City's run towards the title comes to an end, because they need to win. Both teams have to win. City, if they don't win, Arsenal win the title. They win it without, again, like West Ham, without having to kick a ball next weekend. And nobody wants that. But also nobody wants to see Bournemouth not get into Europe. I mean, that would be really cool too. So tough one to call, but I think we're all more or less aligned that we don't want Arsenal to win the title, right? Yes, correct. Okay. Well, we also have one more game that comes up. And if you're watching this again, it happens today. Chelsea and Spurs going to Stamford Bridge to see how their season ends up. West Ham losing to Newcastle is huge, absolutely massive, because again, Spurs don't have to, they just need to not lose, and they confirm their status in the league. And not mathematically. You can probably hear me and thinking I'm stupid, I don't know what I'm talking about. But there's such a big goal differential. Actually, well, can we pull up the table? Let's just go to it. Let's just go to the table. Look at this. And yes, we're starting at the bottom of the table because that's what we have to do. Because let's say that Spurs get a 1 point out at Stamford Bridge. Well, then that would mean that they're on 39 points, which means that West Ham, if they were to lose next week and West Ham won, they would equal 39 points, right? They would be equal. But because the way that the Prem works, they have to have a better goal differential. Let's see, what is that? 22. There's a 13 goal differential, which means that West Ham would have to beat whoever they're playing. I think they're playing Leeds. They have to beat them by 13 goals and hope that no other goals are scored by Spurs in order to catch them. So that's why I'm saying even a point pretty much confirms their status in the Prem next season. The only problem is Spurs haven't won in 36 years at Stamford Bridge. They don't have to win, though. They don't have to win. This is a different time. Chelsea, maybe the team is going to be looking to impress their new coach, Xabi Alonso. Who knows if he'll even be there? I doubt it. But, man, what a big, freaking important game this is. Okay. I've said it all. I've said enough. Look at us. We're talking about this. Oh, wait. Let me go to the top of the table, huh? Before we get out of here. Arsenal, City. I've already told you the stakes. City have to beat Bournemouth. By the time you watch this, you might actually know if they're even in the title race or not, but they have to beat Bournemouth in order to stay and to push this race to the final day. That is for the top 2 spots right there. Manchester United also confirmed their status in Aston Villa in the Champions League. But now we have Liverpool, 59 points, Bournemouth, 55 points. Again, if Bournemouth lose to City, then it's done and dusted. But if they win, watch out, Liverpool. You could be within a point of not getting into the Champions League. And then as it stands, Brighton and Brentford getting into Europe as well. Very, very cool stuff. Interesting stuff as well. I think they have 82 points. Who has 82 points? Arsenal. Oh, yeah. This is someone. Okay, yes. So going to be very, very interesting to see how the season ends at the top and the bottom of the table. I feel like it's getting way too close for Arsenal to even lose this league, which is not cool. But as long as Spurs stay up, does anybody really care? Okay. That is it. DJ, play our music. Thanks for stopping in, everybody, for this all snooze version of the No Business Soccer Podcast. My music just stopped on me. Look at that. But either way, thanks for joining in. Like, subscribe, do all the things here because we love you and we want you to keep coming back for more news at the No Business Soccer Podcast. So until next time, peace.